RAF Flight Lieutenant Alan Bryett of 158 Squadron was a bomb aimer in a Halifax aircraft shot down over Germany in August 1943. He was captured and sent to Stalag Luft III, the camp that later became immortalised in film for staging one of the biggest and most daring escapes of the war. In this extract from his interview, Alan details his part in the Great Escape.
When I got there, I was the youngest chap in the camp. I was called Junior because I was just 21, which was relatively young. And Group Captain Massey introduced us to Squadron Leader Bushell, who was in charge of the X organisation. The word escape was never used. He'd been shot down over Dunkirk. He was a South African. He'd been in various prison camps, built various tunnels, but had been caught and was a marked man from the German point of view as a dangerous escaper. Bushell was very good. He said that anyone who wanted to take part could join the X organisation. He made perfectly clear if you were caught by the Germans outright on any X organisation stuff, you'd finish up at Colditz or concentration camp, something like that. But the main attraction was that in about 6 months' time, and we're talking about September 43, so round about March 44, there was going to be a big show. It was perfectly obvious, big estate being planned. But no more detail was given you than that. So I volunteered, and so did some of the other fellows, and then you went back to your hut. And over the next 2 or 3 days, an odd RAF chap would come in, and he would say, right, hello Bryett, I hear you're going to help us. And he would gradually tell you what was happening in the camp. He told you, for example, that there had been 3 tunnels in the camp. One had been discovered, but there were 2 tunnels still operating. One was the Harry Tunnel, which was the escape tunnel, and the second tunnel was the Dick Tunnel, which was in Hut 122, the hut in which I was there. Now, one of the things you couldn't avoid spotting if you were living in Hut 122, as I was during the month's probation, was that in the washroom, the wash basin was a room about, I suppose, 12 feet by 12 feet, with wash basins around the side, and the water ran down on the floor into a sump. The sump was about 18 inches deep, and the sump was always full of water, rather like the lavatory pan in a toilet. And every now and again, and certainly 2 or 3 times while I was on my probationary month, there'd be a great kerfuffle quietly one evening, and RAF chaps would come along. They'd empty the water out of the sump, and they'd take the the paving stones which made up the 4 sides of the sump, and when they took that out and there was no water in there, it revealed it was the entrance to one of the tunnels. And so I was in fact living in a hut, in a room next door to one of the two escape tunnels. And in the hut knew that was a store tunnel. It wasn't the escape tunnel, but it was a store tunnel. That really introduced me to the really some of the more exciting things of the Great Escape, because it was actually happening in the room next to me. Now, from that point onwards, the other fellows would come round, and ex-organisation fellows. Chap came to me, for example, and said, right, Bryett, can I see any clothing you brought into the camp? So I said, all the clothing was taken away from me. So he said, you got any shoes? And I'd got my RAF flying boots. Now, RAF flying boots were shoes like this, and the flying boot went right up the leg. Now, when you were shot down, you cut away here, and you threw away the top part of your trousers, and you had a pair of shoes. And he said, right, Bryett, we want to take these shoes. You'll get them back. And I was quite intrigued, really, but they took them away, and about a week later I got them back. The thing which was interesting is that the shoes were very well-made shoes with rubber heels. And when I got them back, the rubber heel had been taken off, and a wooden heel had been nailed on. And the reason they wanted the rubber heel was this: the rubber heel could be cut into a rubber stamp, because all forged passes had various official stamps on, the swastika or something like that. So they would get my heel and they would cut a round circle out of it, and then another prisoner would sort of cut out a swastika and put it on a little handle, and you got a rubber stamp. So in the forgery section, the fellow who was forging rail passes wanted to put a swastika on, so he got Alan Bryett's shoe heel and stamped it on, and he got a swastika. Well, then after that, I became was thrown in the deep end to some of the top ex-organisation people who were in fact based in Hut 122, because they were based there because they were living on a bomb really in the tunnel, and they were wonderul fellows. They were nearly all Squadron, University Air Squadron people who joined the RAF around about 1936 at Cambridge and Oxford and places like that, and became territorials, if you like, auxiliaries in the RAF, and they were called up at the beginning of the war, and they were doing the early flying, the early people shot down. Many of them have been prisoners for 2, 3 and 4 years, but they were absolutely first-class fellows. And anyway, one thing led to another, and fairly quickly I was asked or told really that the job I was going to have was this. Squadron Leader Bushell was in charge of the lot, but in each hut there was a man called Little X. Squadron Leader Bushell was Big X, and there was a man called Little X, and the Little X was the fellow who was the lieutenant to Bushell in Hut 122. Now the other organisation in the Great Escape, there was an intelligence organisation run by a man called Squadron Leader Kirby Green, and Kirby Green had a little S in every hut. And I was called over to Squadron Leader Kirby Green, and he said, would I be interested in being little S for security, in Hut 122? And he explained to me, and I knew the significance of it, because the security of Hut 122 was vital only to the security in Hut 104 where the escape tunnel was. And he said, would I do it and absolutely keep my ears open and report to him anything suspicious. For example, one of the Germans coming in and scratching about round in the wash basin, or seemed to be spending a lot of time in 122. I was to find out who the German was, and they all had nicknames, and within an hour I had to go across to Kirby Green and said, Herman the Ferret, the German guard, was in Hut 122, and he was going all through the roof, and he was paying a lot of little tiny things of that sort. But my main, quite simple job was this: watch the wash basin sump 24 hours a day, and for Christ's sake come and tell us if the water level goes down, because when they'd open the sump, if it hadn't been sealed up properly, people were washing and having showers and everything in there. The water was going into the sump and seeping through into the tunnel to all the equipment which is in there. And therefore I wasn't the only one doing it, there were several other chaps helping me as well. But you would go into the wash basin, fairly often, once an hour, every 2 hours, and but they sealed it up very carefully. But every now and again it wasn't quite sealed properly, and you'd see the level of water, like in the pan of the basin there, instead of being up there, to drop right down, and a German who was alert would have seen that there was something suspicious there. So that was the other thing you had to do was this, and that was the Germans underneath every camp. The huts were on stilts, and you're counted twice a day, roughly about 9 o'clock in the morning and 4 or 5 in the afternoon, and you all had to go on the parade ground. And what the Germans did do, and they were certainly doing this when I was there, they would leave a German underneath the stilts of the hut, so that you would come back off the rappel, and if you weren't careful you'd start talking about some RAF matter or something of that sort, or maybe playing around in the wash basin. And the other thing you had to do, the huts were, you can see from the shape of the huts, they were, you can see from the huts, there was a big loft area up there. I had to go, because every now and again the Germans would leave one of the German-speaking fellows up in the loft. There was no such thing as sound detector, radio microphones or anything of that sort that they might have left up there. So I was very much involved. Once a week, sometimes more often, they would come to me and they would say, right, the tunnel's going to be open, wash basin tunnel's going to be open at 8 o'clock at night, and it would be all quiet at 5 to 8, and then suddenly at 8 o'clock you'd have Bushell and all the senior people there, because they all got bits of equipment to take down and hide in the tunnel, and it was done very, very in a very military way. The wash basin would be open for maybe 6.5 minutes, and they get all the stuff down and take out the stuff they wanted. But it did bring me very much in contact The other point is too, when I was shot down in 1943, I couldn't see the war was going to end in May 1945. I could see the war going on for 10 years. The thought of not having any chance at all of getting out for 4, 5, 6, 8, 10 years. Chaps had already been there 4, and I couldn't think what it would be like. And that was another spur. But the other thing was, it was a therapy. It was the whole of the escape organisation was a therapy for a large number of prisoners. The chaps who were forging a document, he might spend all day long forging a little piece of paper, sort of 2 inches by 3, but that was an absolutely vital piece of work. There were 2,000 people in the North Compound, and roughly 650 were involved in ex-organisation activity. Now, of those, there was a hard core of probably 50 or 100 who were desperate escapers. The plans were going to be, there were going to be 40 priority escapers. These would be fellows who fell into 2 clear categories. Roughly 20 of them would be the actual tunnellers, the fellows who had really done the real guts of the whole job, digging the tunnel. A lot of these were Poles. After that, there would be another 20 fellows who had 2 qualities. They spoke German fluently, and they were in Germany. And of course, the fellows who fell into this category were the actual tunnels themselves, but the other 20 were the Free French, the Free Belgian, the Free Dutch, the Free Czechoslovakian, and the Free Polish. And then a lot of, if I use expressions, sort of hard asses, who were going to go out, but obviously weren't going to get very far. So what happened? You heard who the priority escape was going to be very good. Some were in Hut 122 because they played a key part in the washing sump tunnel. You see. After that, we were told individual people would be chosen, and I was called across there and told that we wanted to go out. I couldn't speak any German. The only thing I could do was speak French, and there was a group of us who could speak French fairly well, and there were a lot of French foreign workers around there. So it was decided that we would go out as a little group of French foreign workers, and one of the RAF chaps would be dressed as a German soldier. He would get us through the tunnel, get us out the other end, get us in the woods, and then it was very much every man for himself. And we got directions to go, and we'd had maps and diagrams and of the immediate layout of the land. But that was the packing order, really. On the night of the escape hut was Hut 104. You couldn't have a large number of fellows at 10 to 10 all getting up from various huts and all walking over to 104. So it was all staggered across. And I got round there about 7:30 at night, well, that was the time I was told to get there. And when I got there, I got a detailed map of 5 miles around the camp and a less detailed map of 25 miles showing the villages and the farms. And I also had iron rations of food. I was given a shirt, rather the sort of white shirt with black stripes like concentration camp workers had, which French foreign workers were wearing. I was given a little pass form to say I was a French foreign worker, and you were also given iron rations of food, which was basically chocolate. And I will never forget, I couldn't recognise some of those priority seafarers. They were dressed as soldiers, sailors, German civilians, complete with clothing. There was a fellow dressed as a woman with dresses. The escape started at 10 o'clock at night, and Squadron Leader Bushell, or Richard Attenborough in the film, went down, and that was fine. The first thing which had gone wrong, which is shown in the film, which is true, is that when Bushell got out the far end, the tunnel had not come up inside the bushes at the far end. It had gone well underneath the wire and had gone out well beyond the camp. But the idea was it should come up inside the bushes, so that as the prisoners came out of the hole, they'd be covered by bushes to get away smoothly. And there's a bit in the film where there's a message going back, bloody tunnel's 15 feet too short, and that is in through. And I didn't know this until the middle 50s when we had a reunion in town at the RAF club. The senior group captain Massey and Bushell were almost sure the tunnel was a bit short, but the other point was this: the Germans knew there was a tunnel there. They were searching huts more frequently. They couldn't find it. Priority escapers got to Sargon Station, not planned because of the escape, because no one in London knew the escape was taking place that night. And there was a complete blackout over the whole of northern Germany. So all the searchlights went out, all the lights went out in the huts, and the lights in the tunnel went out because they were run off the lights in the hut. We covered this by having candles all the way along, about every 40 feet there was a candle in a little container, but someone had to go along and light the candles. And between 12 o'clock and 1 o'clock hardly anyone got out because it was very difficult with the candles. You've got fumes, and see, the tunnel was very small really, and you've got chaps with fairly bulky uniforms on. One of the Polish fellows got claustrophobia, and he got stuck halfway down the narrow part of the tunnel, and they couldn't move him forward, they couldn't move him back. Anyway, in the end they did move him. It was quite obvious by about 3 or 4 in the morning that a lot of us who were still there in the hut at all, we were just going to get caught like rats in a trap.
Please help to rescue and preserve more memories of the Second World War. Visit www.war-experience.org.